This is my presentation for the book talk project on nonfiction. The book I chose for my project is called The Crossing. The reason I chose this book is because I was going through the library and I'm like, let me find a nonfiction book. And then I found one. It wasn't too long, so I picked it up. And then I started reading it. It was okay. Since it wasn't too long, and it was okay, and it wasn't that boring, I decided I should read it for my project. The purpose of the book is basically just to tell the story of how General Washington and his army had crossed the Delaware, which is evident in the title, and then after that they faced very not so looking good for General Washington's army odds, and they still won. And there aren't really any spoilers because you've probably talked about it in history class, and there's also not a surprise ending because of the same reason. There isn't really much of a central idea, really, for the book, since it's just telling the story of Washington and his army crossing the Delaware and then fighting the British and all that. But if I'd have to think of an idea that the book promotes, I guess you could say, it'd probably be that against all odds, you can still make things work even if it doesn't seem like it. Kind of like if you're doing your book project very late at night because you didn't want to do it earlier because you procrastinate, like me. The organization of the book is in chronological order, so it starts from it starts from before Washington crossed the Delaware. I think it starts before he even was a general, and when the army had victories, but then they started to lose. If you want to read this book, unless you really like history, you are probably gonna find this book boring because it's pretty slow paced and there isn't really exciting. And on the point of what was the most surprising part, well, I didn't find anything very surprising except for the part where the Hessians had bayonets and they stabbed a lot of people near the beginning. So, I guess that's surprising. Slaughter, pretty epic and cool, all that. Some of the information that I doubt from this book is that sometimes the point of view goes from the narrator talking about the events to a letter from the time of when that happened, from say a general, and sometimes the letters just kind of seem fake when reading them. They don't really seem like something someone would write in that time. So I kind of doubted the letters, but that was about it that I doubted the information of. For me, I think the most interesting part was how Washington, how motivated he was, and how, for most of the part, people said that he was just a normal guy. They wouldn't expect him to be a general if they just met him without knowing who he was beforehand, because he was just a normal guy, and he had to lead an army, basically, against all odds, and it worked out. So, only thing I could really put together from the book and my knowledge previously is basically Washington crossed the Delaware, and then they did some battles and they won against a lot of the odds. And that's basically all I knew beforehand, so I'm not surprised to have seen that in the book. This book didn't change any of my viewpoints or perception, since we learned about all this in history class already, so I already kind of knew. My overall recommendation for this book is that unless you like history and learning about Washington, I wouldn't read it because it's pretty slow paced and boring. 7 out of 10.